I watched His Excellency Kagame saying that we have chosen as Africans to kneel, and I agree with him. We have chosen to kneel. The plight of Africa is because the leaders have chosen to kneel even where they shouldn't be kneeling. And he said, I will not kneel. You can bring guns, weapons, and shoot me dead, but I will not kneel. Unfortunately for him, and I think to some extent, President Museveni, they have failed, although they have lived in the government for long, in my view, they have failed to build a convergence that African leaders, particularly presidents, need to speak one language. You have heard the president here is saying, Africa, don't sell your minerals in raw form. Next door in the Congo, what is Tshisekedi doing? He is giving the whole mine, so he doesn't even know what is doing.
The whole country.
The whole country. What's happening?
They have sold even the not yet born minerals.
So
only 40%.
I think Africa is on path of futility, except if we can do something very, very strange and drastic. But I think we are on path of futility. This campaign of the president saying we need to build strategic security. No African leader, not many, are believing that strategic security is what we need to have in order to survive. I think there's a sense in which I see quite often most of the African leaders are petty-minded. If you ask that, I don't think he even understands why his country is the way it is. But unfortunately, he's the leader by some circumstances. And if you go around Africa, we have many leaders of that type. And therefore, it is unlikely that Africa can get out of this quagmire, where just because you see somebody with a brown face, you automatically believe he's superior. He's superior in intellect, he's superior in knowledge, and so on and so forth. We don't seem to see that actually we can come from relative weakness to relative strength. How to deal with these ever-changing dynamics of the world. We don't. And you remember when at the start of the Ukraine war, when the president here says, "But why are you crying of wheat when you can actually eat millet, you can eat sorghum, you can eat cassava?" Many people didn't see that actually you have so many things in Africa that you can replace wheat with. As basic as that.
But I want to put Robert here on task. It goes back all our time when we went to school.
That's more than 40 years ago.
Yes. There was a certain section of at the university, when you read the Mamdanis,
the Mawazos,
the the entire Mawazos, and they were so deliberate in the way they were training students, so that you produce leaders who understand this continent better and so on. And I can tell you, I am hugely disappointed.
Can you point one? In any of these universities, who's driving?
A certain thought,
really, I didn't know all dislikes me this much. I am trying to drive the narrative.
No, you see,
which one?
Technology. Even, let me tell you, even the writing, it's not even the writings. Just look at those guys, the books they wrote, and so on. And look at people at this university. You guys,
Abdu, you're making an excellent point. I'm going to give you the correct diagnosis off the air on why we are where we are and what personally I am doing.
No, I'm talking about
we are part of the problem.
Where we are. No. I'm trying to be part of the solution.
I want to
where we are.
I want to tell you, Robert, you are part of the problem.
No.
But
information.
Context has changed. I think the lecturers in that place, for all intents and purposes, are under strict It's almost like a secondary school.
It's run
You
by,
say
no,
it's
it's not a secondary. It's a
Gentlemen,
primary school.
ladies, gentlemen,
Makerere is run by a Soviet-trained.
to answer your question, Abdul, I will hand
And
you over.
that's where the problem is.
Let me answer your question on a personal basis. My doctoral thesis answers a very simple question related to what you were discussing, and Edgar, about how should we design a fiscal regime for natural resources in Uganda? Because I can tell you, I have answered the question. When first oil flows, the fiscal regime is going to change. And the starting point is strategic choices, and how do we reposition for that? So the work is coming. But this is a good place for us to stop. We are out of time, Edgar.
The African is the author, in major part, the author of their own misery.
That is a very good place for us to stop. I want to just thank everyone. Thank you all. Thank you, Edgar. Abdul, thank you for your thoughts on the gang. Thank you, Derek. Thank you, John. Thank you, Lydia. Happy Women's Day to our ladies, all the women in our lives past.
The dynamics of the Americans. You know, when we were in Rwanda, as you know, for 4 years. In that war, when at the conclusion of that war, that liberated Rwanda, the entire army of the government that had collapsed went to DRC.
Now talk about what's happening in Rwanda very briefly. Let me start with, naturally, the vote in the studio is that we start with you, Edgar. What's going on over there? What's going on over there? And what do we need to know?
Yes, I belong to the Kinyarwanda-speaking people groups, one of the Kinyarwanda-speaking groups, the Bafumbira. Although I'm domiciled in Toro and then naturalized Mutoro. So the question is, what is happening?
What is happening between Rwanda and the US?
Try to introduce yourself, of course.
Well, first, I must say I'm conflicted. In the past, recent past, I've been subject of missives between Kampala and Kigali. And Lydia, you know about this very well. So do you, Honorable OO. As such, I have to declare my interest. I'm conflicted. Now going to what is
said that.
Having said that, separating the facts from the perceptions and the fiction, America is actively pursuing economic interests in the DRC. It is financing the Lobito corridor that starts in Angola at the Atlantic Ocean, terminating at Kolwezi, the border point between DRC and Zambia. It's very critical for movement of minerals that are regarded as essential for the motor vehicle industry. We're talking of cobalt, lithium, coltan, which America wants to secure, and not secure by just signing agreements, but also deploying its military tools. It's being done both through the AFRICOM, United States Africa Command, and there's been a lot of shuttle diplomacy. There's been a lot of shuttling between DC, Kinshasa, and Bujumbura. Now, the South Kivu also has particular minerals of interest for the United States, but also to secure South Kivu, the best aerodrome or aircraft facility is Bujumbura Port. So there's now an intent. What you'd read it as intent. I think in this region, intent is very critical in identity and whatever. But there's an intent between Bujumbura, Kinshasa, and Washington D.C. And to be precise, with the Oval Office. So Bujumbura itself has given its resource, the nickel, to the United States. It's very critical for the aircraft industry, and particularly also in the military industry. So the United States is deploying both the Africa Command. It has also deployed Eric Prince. Eric Prince runs a company called Blackwater. They are ex-SEALs and military contractors for the United States government. And they've deployed very sophisticated drones that fly for about 3 hours. They are the most sophisticated that we have in the region so far. And those are the ones that were deployed when Willie Ngoma was killed. And in particular, the FARDC, the armed forces of the DRC or RDC, the French acronym, have retaken Rubaya mine. Rubaya mine is the source of about 30% of the world's supply of coltan. Now that is very critical for the electronics industry. Some of these things we are carrying, gadgets we are carrying, Apple rely heavily on that. But they have also been given the mandate by the DRC government to deploy in Ituri, and in particular to man their aerodromes and mines. Now, last weekend I mentioned it here on air. You shall recall, Honorable Katuntu, that might put the operations of FARDC at variance with UPDF if there's no synchronization and alignment. And indeed, later in this week, I saw a letter by a sector commander of Ituri. Sector commander, not a division, not even at CDF level, but a sector commander, a colonel.
Of which army?
Of FARDC, limiting the deployment of UPDF in Ituri.
So, Edgar, one parting shot on this.
Yes.
Where do we go from here?
Where do we go from here?
And how does this affect us?
How does this affect us? Excuse me from further discussion on this matter. Excuse me from further discussion of this matter. I've given you the facts. I'll not give you opinions.